Live. Everywhere. On netrootsradio.com. David Waldman. Kagro. In the morning. Now, here's David Waldman.
Hey, good morning, everybody. How you doing? It's Thursday, August 22nd, 2024. Time for another show. It is last evening of Democratic National Convention today, which means, of course, that last night was the penultimate, as it happens, that's the right word, penultimate evening of the Democratic National Convention. And production, staff, travel schedules being what they are, that was on the television yesterday. I saw some things. I saw some good ones, and I saw some not so good ones, but I saw the ones that were on offer, and tonight's the big night for the climactic acceptance speech. Greg Dworkin will be with us to wrap things up from yesterday's session. Look forward to this evening's session. Don't know whether we're going to do a Friday appearance or not, but I'm sure if the speeches are exciting enough, or events surrounding the speeches are exciting enough, let's say, that he'll be interested in chiming in one more time. There is, there's reviews from all over. There's news from all over. I got word just this morning, although it happened earlier, that in the middle of it all, Congressman Bill Pascrell of New Jersey, he was the 9th District current representative, 87 years old, has died. And I guess will now need to be replaced on the ballot, in case you were wondering how that works. But first and foremost, he died in office. And so word from the family that that's the case. I should see if there is maybe some reporting on it in the local papers. I guess I can take a quick look around and find whether there's some reporting from, say, the Star Ledger or the Bergen Record, which would be the local papers. I just typed it in, and first hit was from, well, not the first one, but the first one that I was likely to click on was from the New York Times. But as you know, he was from New Jersey. It should be a New Jersey paper that reports, or that we use to report on his death. Katie Sobko from NorthJersey.com, their Bergen Records online presence, I guess. Noting that this is the case, a Patterson resident and former mayor, Pascrell was first elected to Congress in 1996 and had served on the House Ways and Means Committee since 2007. So it's been a long time. I think 14 terms. Is in the middle of his 14th term. The district was redrawn a couple of times. He was 8th district and then became the 9th district. And he was, I guess, noted in many of the reports of his death that he was a very sharp critic of Donald Trump. I'm sure he would have liked to have hung around, voted against him and one more time, and been around to needle him when he lost. But, all right. Well, all of that aside, there's plenty of other things to catch up on, and perhaps we give his broader biography using the Bergen Record piece later on, just to sort of fill you in. And as I understand things, the rules are such that because the vacancy happened before X date, and it's like late in August, I mean, it's pretty close to the line, but as opposed to having to wait until afterwards and have a special election later on, the Democratic Party in New Jersey can internally select a new candidate and put them on the ballot and get them on the ballot for this November. So the only vacancy will be that caused by his death between now and the inauguration of a new, although it would be interesting to see whether or not it's possible to, the New Jersey politicians will be working overtime to see whether it's possible to consider the November election a special election as well as the general election. Sometimes they can make these things overlap, and swear him in early because the seat will be vacant, well, from now until January of 2025 otherwise. and the district deserves representation. So we'll see if we can't sort that procedural question out at some point. But the speeches will be top line news. I'm sure Mr. Pascrell would have understood that the focus would be on the Democratic National Convention rather than him personally. And it was a big night, and Greg is ready to talk about it, and that's good news too, because I'm ready to hit the mute button a couple of times and clear things up. A little rusty this morning, rusty pipes for me today. Anyway, lots happening last night. I think for me, speech of the evening, actually, Oprah Winfrey. I don't know. That's I'll give it to. And everybody tuned in to check out the Bill Clinton speech, likely to, of course, go on too long. Everyone knows that much about Bill Clinton. But Bill Clinton getting on in years, I think. And I think it was kind of obvious there. Of course, he's not the candidate. And as he pointed out, he's still younger than Donald Trump. Good morning, Greg. How are you?
Good morning. So as a process question, I'm just sort of curious. Do you know who appoints the Democratic replacement in New Jersey? Is it the governor or the party?
Well, typically that only happens in the Senate, for one thing, but it's the governor. But here, in this case, they're just substituting a different candidate on the ballot. And they won't be able to fill the seat because it's a House seat. They just have to have either a special election.
I mean, it's empty until the election.
Yeah. Well,
but the second process question.
Okay.
Is there an actual rule that says you can't do this, or is it convention that it says you can't do this? I mean, if they appointed to run Andy Kim, could he serve in the Senate and the House at the same time?
That I think is...
Since he's going to be the senator.
Yeah, that's a rule. I don't think you can hold those two federal offices at once.
Is it a state rule, a federal rule?
I think it might be constitutional.
It's a constitutional rule?
I have no... I don't know if I can cite you the chapter and verse.
Because, you don't want to assume anything.
Yeah. Well, it won't be him.
I know
he's busy. But
I can assume it won't be him.
Yeah.
But why?
Yeah, I don't think you can't serve in both houses at once. I'm not certain that's necessarily explicitly laid out
That's what I'm asking.
But I'm pretty sure it's considered a constitutional rule.
I'm pretty sure it won't happen. I'm just asking.
Yeah, but New Jersey is a little strange, and it's a good question because if there's no federal prohibition on it, New Jersey is one of those states, and there are fewer every day.
What if George Norcross said you could? I mean,
Well, right. And ask Andy Kim about that, because I think Andy Kim made a point about this at some point that New Jersey, or it came up in the context of his running. New Jersey is still, I think, one of those states that you can hold state office and local office simultaneously, that the mayor of, as many of them do, they're the mayor of their town and state assembly person or state senator at the same time.
Right. So New Jersey has precedent for this, in other words.
For weirdness and holding on to yes. But, I think there's a prohibition on holding two federal offices at once. And that's a federal issue, not a state issue.
Well, look, I know you can't, but as a process question, I don't know exactly why you can't, because I'm not a lawyer and I don't do this for a living.
Okay. Well, offhand, I don't know I can't make a citation, but I can research it while we're talking because it's an interesting question.
Yeah. Anyway, so I have two things I want to play. One at the very top of the list, one at the very bottom of the list.
Things to play. Okay. Let me move over to, actually, what I should do is go through my process of pocketing them and moving them over. So one is at the top of the list.
Very, very top.
Okay.
Very bottom. You'll see the big black X's. That's the way it shows up.
Yeah, that's X marks the spot. I like that it's doing that. This is the first time I've been happy that he's changed the name of this thing to X. All right. So one at the top and one down at the bottom. Bottom is easy to scroll to. Oh, one's okay. I don't want to reveal the contents of these until you're ready.
Well, I don't want to remember the content until I can actually remember what it was I wanted to send you. But I found them both interesting.
All right. I am, let's see. Now we got to, go over to the other computer and open Pocket. And I think we're about ready. We can do this soon.
Okay. Play whichever one.
All right. Well, we'll do the first one because it was first. And it takes a little while. It's a slow process.
If it works properly, what the first one should be is a simple summary of everything that happened last night.
I need some music. The Democratic Convention runners know that, we fill this time with music. if I'm not ready to run the tape. Yeah. That's one version. Sure. All right. Let's see. Turn up the sound. Okay. Oh, and it starts with Oprah, as we just mentioned. Okay.
Kamala Harris!
Oh, my goodness. I wasn't prepared for that.
Party with a purpose.
Let's go! I'm Pete Buttigieg, and you might recognize me from Fox News.
The woman who courageously outed Kamala Harris as Indian.
We are the party of real freedom.
Okay. Oh, we get to do the audio quiz for that. Who was that speaking? Just right there.
I don't know. I would have guessed Jeff Duncan. I can't see it.
Okay, right. You can't see it. But that was, I'll play it again because people have commented on the voice here and the voice and cadence. All right, hang on. Let me give you the whole thing. First, we got to finish with Mindy Kaling and then.
As Indian.
We are the party of real freedom.
We are the party of real freedom.
Yeah, so that's a Democrat.
Yes. Is it? And as everybody has been pondering, is it?
See, the reason I'm saying that
happened last night,
in the divorce between the Democrats and the Republicans, as somebody noted on Twitter, the Democrats got the Bible, football, and freedom, and Republicans get the boat parades and Donald Trump.
Yeah, good. Fantastic. Please take custody. Or someone should be taking that guy into custody.
Yeah. So
anyway, it was, so is it A, Barack Obama, or B, Josh Shapiro?
Then it's going to be Josh Shapiro.
Yeah, because it was from last night. So that ruined it. But if you didn't know,
people. If you think it might have been Barack Obama, then it's Josh Shapiro.
Exactly. There you can really hear it. And, all right. So there's more though. Cory Booker up next. You want me to keep rolling?
Keep rolling.
All right. Good. Let's go.
Short, but it's a deep bench and a lot of people to hear.
Yeah. All right.
1825. I'm sorry. You ever seen a document that could kill a small animal and democracy at the same time? Project 1925. Oh, I'm sorry.
You can pry this wedding band from my cold, dead, gay hand.
They're trying to suppress our
I'm not watching.
I'm still younger than Donald Trump.
There you go.
That would be Bill Clinton.
Right. Yeah, I know.
And when you hear that, you understand why I said the other day, there are people from Pennsylvania who want Bill Clinton to go do the campaigning. And I'm thinking, why don't you watch him do the speech first before you decide you want him out on the trail every day for a month?
Yes.
The guy is 78. I don't think he's up to it any more than Joe Biden is. And the whole point of changing to a we're about tomorrow thing is to not have a 78-year-old as talented as he is go out and do all your campaigning for you. Instead, what the Democrats featured last night were people you might not even know, like Wes Moore, who's dynamic and fantastic, Josh Shapiro, Pete Buttigieg. The bench is deep, and they got talented people.
Yeah, and there's more to come. Hakeem Jeffries is up next. All right, let's see.
Donald Trump, bro, we broke up with you for a reason. It's the honor of my life.
This guy, I understand.
Your nomination for vice president.
We know that guy.
Dad in plaid.
Other states were banning books from their schools. We were banishing hunger from ours.
That is such a good line.
Yeah. I think Oprah has just one mode here. Oh, I think I reset
it. But Oprah did something extraordinarily significant.
She did a number of
that was not
things
on the clips that you played.
Oh, all right. Let's see.
And it wasn't because she told everybody to look under their seats to see what they got.
I know. I was really going to say, you get a Kamala, and you get a Kamala, and you get a Kamala. Okay, well.
What she did is she said, I am an independent, and I'm talking to you independents.
Yes.
So we had Jeff Duncan, who is a Republican. We had Olivia Troy, who I didn't know was Mexican-American, who was a Republican. She was the national security advisor to Mike Pence, who probably told him, get the hell out of here. They're trying to hang you.
Yeah.
And we had appeals to independents and Republicans, not just directly from people like Olivia Troy and Jeff Duncan, and from the mayor, the other day of, the Arizona border town.
Ah, yeah, Mesa, right?
But we had Bexar County, that's Bexar, pronounced Bear, like
Bexar, yeah, okay. Like, yes.
We had the sheriff who said that I'm on the border, I'm Latino. And when Donald Trump comes down here to stand next to us, it's all cosplay. It's all LARPing.
LARP. Yeah.
Live action, role playing.
Yeah.
And we need Kamala Harris because, they blew off that bill that we told them we wanted to pass.
Right.
The border bill failed because Donald Trump said so, and then Chris Murphy came out and he said exactly the same thing. So what I'm saying is that part of it was the appeal to non-traditional Democrats, independents, persuadables, Republicans for Harris, that sort of crowd. And I thought it was powerful and I thought it was good. And then, of course, they wind up leaning into the Coach Walz persona, which works because it's not fake. It is totally genuine. And everybody who knows him says so. And who says so? The football team.
Yeah, I saw that.
The football team.
Several, I think it looked like.
He brought out, basically, I guess he was a defensive coordinator, so those guys all look like linebackers, and right tackles. And so, his whole speech, went into that. And you played a small clip of it. There were some, pretty important things he said during this speech. Now, part of the reason I was doing my due diligence, not just for the show, but, for my own head, watching and I had the wherewithal and the awareness to do this, which I hadn't done in other years, plus C-SPAN. So ever since Walz was selected, I've been watching his stump speech to see how it evolved. And in the very beginning, his first one, I guess, was in Philadelphia. And he did the,
just since then
coach, not the couch.
Yeah.
Sort of thing. That dropped. It didn't work. And he hasn't done it since. But I've been watching his stump speech evolve, and then basically he gave the stump speech very short, very succinct, very to the point, added some stuff in it, particularly at the end about football coaching metaphors.
No.
And he's gotten it really tight. He's gotten it really down. Some of those lines work so well, like we have a golden rule in the Midwest, mind your own damn business. That is just perfect. It is just perfect. It doesn't matter how many times you hear it. It's like Kamala Harris looking at you and saying, tell me to my face. It just works.
Yeah. Well, it's one he should stick with.
Right. And then, he pushes the football analogy as far as he could. So I've got neighbors in Newtown who are from Nebraska, who are from Wisconsin. I think we may have talked about this on the show yesterday. And I check with them and say, well, this is football analogy. Oh, yeah, coach. Absolutely, it works. It works just as well as the cheese heads and the corn heads from Nebraska.
I don't think I've seen those yet.
But you do what you need to. Oh, yeah, it works. I mean, we're talking Midwest here. It works.
Yeah.
And so yesterday was an appeal, not so necessarily because, again, it's not Harris. Harris is the one that has to make the sale. She'll do that tonight. But if you want to attract those who are persuadable, if you want to attract disaffected Republicans, if you want to attract independents, you do it the way they did it last night. You do it on January 6th. You do it on security, like the Bexar County sheriff. You do it with football analogies. You do it with Bible references. You do it with chants of USA, USA. These are things that, as hokey and as corny and as cringe as you may think, it works. Not just in the Midwest. It works for independent voters.
Okay. Well, they had a speaker of their own.
Who?
The independent voters.
The independents.
Yes.
Well, Oprah, if you've never heard of her, you'd look at her and say, wow, she's really good. She should have her own TV show.
Yeah, she should run for office for some party or another. Oh, she doesn't have one. Okay.
Doesn't have one. Anyway, so there's that. Then there's another clip, which I think summarizes the response. And that's all the way at the bottom.
Okay. Clicking on it. And
you're clicking on it.
Yeah,
So you found it.
Yeah, I found it.
While you set it up, because you got to do things. Put it in the pocket, adjust the autoplay, change the sound. See, I'm getting used to this.
Yeah.
So while you do all of that stuff, let me set it up.
All right.
Reasons that nobody understands.
Well, then
Mike Lindell was at the Democratic National Convention, and they let him in. I don't know why.
They let him in. That is interesting.
So he's inside the building.
Did he forge his credentials the way he did with the...
But he decides to, again, for reasons I don't know.
Yeah.
He decides to confront like a 12, 13-year-old kid.
Well, can I suggest pervert?
Well, play the tape.
Okay.
And then we'll talk about it. It's not that long.
Okay. But I'm just putting pervert out there first. Okay. Oh, this is going to have to be boosted in the sound, I think.
Boosted,
probably
man.
because
Boosted.
of how perverted he is. Let's see. We'll go over here. And
you'll hear
over
background
there.
noise, but hopefully you'll hear him, and then you'll hear the kid's response.
Oh, okay. So I'm not sure how much to boost it, but we'll boost it by, I don't know, this amount, maybe. Okay, 1 click. Now another click. All right, back over here. Okay, background noise. He's in a crowded place. Is that him in a green jacket?
Yeah, green jacket and a boater.
He's terrific. Low profile. All right, let's see.
That's in your state. You want to know more in your state? So they just found 257,000 votes. This happened last week. A judge ruled in Georgia that are missing.
What? Okay. But I see the kid.
Did you hear the kid's response?
Show me any source for this or something?
Yeah. He says, what's your source?
Yeah.
Tell me, bro.
Okay. That's funny. Yeah. So, I don't know where he got this. Is this what maybe he's shouting himself hoarse around the country, but I don't know. I guess he's in incognito.
This is their response to what I just told you about is going on there. You tell me what's going to be more effective.
Yeah, that's something. Well, nothing helps the weird, blow over like confronting children and saying, show me what they have 250 votes in Georgia.
Right, this is a separate thing. I'm not going to ask you to play, but let me just tell you, the kid's name is Noah, Knowa.
Oh.
And a reporter comes over and interviews him and said, what was that all about? And the kid says, I don't know, but Lindell provided no facts, no sources. I'm confused as to why his source was, trust me, bro.
There you go.
The kid is great. Lindell looks like an idiot, and there you have the Republicans right in a nutshell.
Yeah. I mean, there was no chance that he wasn't going to look like an idiot, but there was some chance that the child would be frightened and
exactly.
worried.
Then he'd look worse, but for different reasons.
Yeah.
But no, this kid was ready for him. He's ready for prime time.
So what we found out is Mike Lindell belongs in jail for the night, at the least, just for the harassment. And Noah, what's Noah's last name? Do we know?
I don't know.
Well, I
don't know.
If he's about 12, wait 12 years, and then he'll be at the convention running for Congress.
He'll be Secretary of Transportation.
Well, he'll have to wait a little longer for that. I don't know if there's any age limit. That's another constitutional question. Can you be
cabinet members?
Well,
they have
25
to be in succession, so there must be something.
Yeah,
probably 35.
That's true. Well,
but I'm not a lawyer.
You could skip over them. All right. Well, I want to hear what Noah. I want to hear Lindell being foolish, and then Noah telling him to go away because he's just a kid. He wouldn't say F off.
Yeah.
All right.
2020 election. This just came out. You're behind. So
your source is trust me, bro? That's your source?
The source. It's in your papers in Georgia. You need to read your news.
You haven't given me any last name.
You need to read your news. No, this is your Georgia news. This is your Georgia.
And then he just walks away.
Weird. All right. Well, Noah just leaves.
Yeah, no, I had enough. Like you're lying. I don't need to sit here and do that.
I'd love to know how he zoomed in on the kid at all. Like, you really shouldn't be doing that.
Right. So there's another theme that ran through all of this.
Yeah.
And we had Bill Clinton, and Bill Clinton was Bill Clinton. He was fine. He's old, but he's fine. He made
the
points.
Speech took the usual amount of Bill Clinton time.
Exactly, all that stuff. And so that winds up putting Walz into after 11. But that's because you had, during prime time, dynamic, young Democratic bench in terms of, as I said, Wes Moore, who really surprised with how good he was, Pete Buttigieg, who surprised nobody with how good he was, Josh Shapiro, who surprised nobody with how good he was. And, of course, again, as part of the Republican response, the next morning or right after, I don't know exactly when this is, but Donald J. Trump tweets on his Truth Social thing, the highly overrated Jewish governor of the great Commonwealth of Pennsylvania, Josh Shapiro, made a really bad and poorly delivered speech talking about freedom and fighting for comrade Kamala Harris for president. Yet she hates Israel and will do nothing but make its journey through the complexities of survival as difficult as possible. I stop there and say, look, he didn't write this. But the important thing is he let it be published.
Yeah.
So Dan Scavino writes this, but basically by committee, they agree to be anti-Semitic.
Yeah, that was pretty cool. Blah, 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 Jewish governor. All right, you're already out of bounds.
Okay.
Mistake.
You all are the anti-Semitic party, and you let the Jewish governor, who is highly overrated, by the way, let me tell you, point out just how anti-Semitic you are by allowing him to speak, and I lost the plot, and I don't know what I'm saying, but here it is.
All right.
And then he follows that up with, I know how Dan Scavino wrote this. The next one was, I will be interviewed on Fox Friends at 7:30 a.m. Enjoy. So, he goes off, he's nuts, and then, oh, by the way, I'm on TV tomorrow.
Yay. That's what really mattered to him. That might be the part that if he didn't write it, said, well, make sure you tell them I'm going to be on TV.
Yeah. So that was pretty amazing. So, we have
still
that.
Excited about being on
and
TV.
basically
That's
they have
nice.
nothing is what I'm trying to say.
Right. And
which I think
the
is
guy
really
in that green jacket and weird hat.
Yeah. Mark Jacob, the ex-Chicago Tribune editor, says, somebody asked me, why is the political media so bad right now? And my answer is, it's been like that for a while. What's new is how it's being stress tested by a major political party turning full fascist. It took a fire to show us the fire alarm was broken, which is a pretty interesting way to look at things.
Yeah. And we're having that fire now. Unbelievable. I'm still flabbergasted by that. I wish there was more tape about Mike Lindell deciding to approach this kid. Although even further, I'd rather have information about how he gets in, because it's pretty tightly controlled.
I want the kid to have his own show.
Yeah, he deserves it.
So I'm going to tell you a little bit about who watched all of this stuff after the break, and then maybe even mention a little bit about Kenan Thompson.
Sure. His exploration of Project 2025. Did he do more than one segment on that?
Very effective.
Because I just caught one. It was pretty good. And he's got some delivery. Yeah, I like that segment. I felt like they could have done more with that. Maybe they did, and I missed other portions of it.
Well, they tried to, but the sound wasn't working.
Yeah, that was unfortunate. Hi, everybody. It's me, David Waldman. Yes, the same guy who interrupts you all the time. Interrupting you one more time just to tell you again, another reminder that your contributions are what keep this show on the air, and Patreon.com, Patreon.com, is still among the easiest ways to make the sustaining subscription donations that keep us afloat. Are you ready for the pep talk about how our Patreon campaign is still going strong and growing? Well, too bad. Yeah, the plain fact is we actually are headed in the wrong direction, and whereas we once had about 175 monthly patrons, we're now actually down below 150. Time to recruit some more. Not exactly the kind of news I wanted to share, but there it is. For those of you in a position to support the show, Patreon.com does make it easy to make those secure, recurring monthly contributions to do so. Patreon.com/KagroX gets you straight to our donation page. We've been through a lot together. The worst of the pandemic, we hope. The worst of the insurrection, we hope. So go ahead and treat yourself. You don't need an excuse. Give yourself the gift of a little something you enjoy in life. Support the show. And of course, if you happen to prefer using PayPal or even the Square Cash app, we're up and running on those options too. So thanks again, everyone, for all your support. We couldn't, or at least shouldn't, do it without you. Hope you'll be on board soon too. Thanks for all your support. All right, welcome back now to the Kagro in the Morning Show here on Netroots Radio. We continue with Greg Dworkin. Lots more weird to cover, although honestly, I was kind of obsessed with the Mike Lindell piece as you
I thought you would be. It's just so weird.
Yeah, there's a lot of questions about not available on tape.
Weird. That's just all there is to it.
Yeah.
That's why it works.
Yeah.
You asked about J.D. Vance. J.D. Vance had some weird response.
What did I? Yes, okay.
Where he got on Jake Tapper and he said something along the lines of, we really need somebody who cares about people. And folks are looking at that and saying, oh, he just endorsed Kamala Harris.
Oh, well, what do you know? That's nice. Well, that happens a lot. Sometimes, back in the olden days when there were two normal-ish parties working.
You would know that he was referring to his own principal, the person at the top of the ticket. But in this case, since that's what he said,
well, it
he
can't
was
possibly be
Harris,
Donald Trump.
It can't possibly be Trump.
Right.
That's exactly right.
That's, it's weird. Okay. So.
He's weird.
Yeah, well, yeah.
But, one of the things we were discussing, and people, for reasons which I think have to do with not understanding 2024, particularly pundits, older pundits, Ron Fournier, Jeff Greenfield, mention some names. James Surowiecki. I'm just mentioning some of the older pundits who are obsessed with the fact that the big speeches, which is to say Biden on Monday, the Obamas on Tuesday, particularly Barack, and Tim Walz yesterday, were after 11 p.m. and they couldn't get over this.
Oh my God!
Saying, this is political malpractice. Oh my God, they're coming after. As if it's 1972 and George McGovern is speaking at 2 a.m.
I had to drink another Ensure, and it ruined my whole bowel movement in the morning.
I wrote, on Twitter, these guys just do not understand fundamentally. And political scientist Kyle Kondik over at Larry Sabadow's shop agreed with me that 2024 isn't like 1990. I want my editorials back when I had power. People don't watch the way you think they watch, right?
Yes.
Yeah, they go to bed at 11 o'clock because you can't stay up. I get that. Other people might stay up, but I get that you can't. I get that it's on the East Coast and that the West Coast isn't going to sleep yet. I get that, okay, Philadelphia, Pennsylvania, Michigan, their East Coast time, at least parts of it. And so you'd want it to be a little early, but that's not how they get their news these days. And this is backed up by something that the Democratic National Convention put out. This is, for the first night, 20 million people watched. I think we talked about that, whereas the number for the RNC was 18 million.
Right.
On Tuesday, 20 million people watched, didn't drop, it actually went up slightly, and 14 million people watched the RNC. We don't have the numbers yet for last night.
Why not?
For the RNC, it was 18, and then the last night for the RNC was 25.
Okay. Well, the big night.
Why do I say they don't get it? Because this is from the DNC, the Democratic National Convention 2024. On the first night, 20 million people watched on TV, 57 plus million viewers if you include online viewership.
Yes.
That was night one. Okay. Last night, we don't know yet. But on night two, DNC viewing generates 81 million people.
Wow.
A million people in a Dr. Evil voice. The total number of people who voted for Joe Biden in 2020 was 81 million.
They all showed up.
They all showed up to watch.
Some of them are dead. And that's why there's fraud.
They showed up too. 74 million or so for Trump. Just to give you an idea of the magnitude of the numbers. People have changed their viewing habits. When I tell members of my family, hey. Walz is going to speak. Are you going to watch? No, I'll watch tomorrow.
Yeah.
And they do.
On demand.
They watch the next day. And of course, what is the thing that they watch? It doesn't, because it's visual, lend itself to talking about it or showing it or playing it on this show. It'd be very difficult to show, but you could play it. But it's Tim Walz tearing up about his family and fertility treatments.
Okay.
And that's a word he used. He doesn't say IVF anymore, again, talking about his stump speech. It's evolved. Now he says fertility treatments. And that's because his wife used intrauterine fertilization.
Not in vitro.
Not in vitro fertilization. It's part of the same process.
I see.
You do in utero first, and if that doesn't work, then you move to in vitro. But it's all part of the same process. And you plan for everything, and you have to pay for everything, and, it's, the analogy I used was, let's say, and this is, hypothetical, but you'll understand this when you talk about Clipper magazine, right?
Okay.
So let's say, you're an Iraqi, soldier back in the war, and you were close.
An American soldier back from Iraq. Okay.
And you had one of your legs, severed.
Okay.
Okay.
Yeah, let's not
and you
say
get
that.
back and you decide you're going to run for Congress.
Very likely.
And you say, I got my legs blown off in Iraq.
Yeah.
And your opponent
happens.
said, you're lying. You only had one of your legs blown off. You said legs. You meant leg. And somehow or other, they think
one was
that's
reattached.
op-ed, oppo, information gold.
Right.
And they're going to run with it. And that is J.D. Vance trying to attack Walz. And they try to, get into the nuance of everything as if, but Walz speaks like a normal person, and that's why it doesn't work.
Yeah.
Nobody knows the difference between intrauterine and in vitro fertilization. They don't care.
Guess,
they don't know. They don't care. Walz talks about it like a normal person. Those attacks don't work, and that's part of the reason why. They don't get it. It's not sincere. They know they're full of it, and it's a Clip magazine stuff that doesn't change the basics of what's going on here, and people, normal people who hear this, totally understand it.
Yeah, well, that applies across the board. It's a part of the fact checkers, which,
the fact checkers.
This lacks context. Well, now we have 4 years of context for that. We know what the context is.
So they were talking about crime. I guess it was Buttigieg says something about, crime was higher under Trump than it was, under Biden.
Well,
and the fact
checker
said, well, that's not true. Because for the first couple of years, crime dropped, but then it went up, and the total was much higher than it dropped, but therefore it's not completely true.
There was a moment there.
Regular people looked at it and said, what the hell are you even talking about?
Well, yeah.
In other words, you're saying he was right.
Verbiage. Yeah. All right. It gets crazier and crazier every time. And, all right. I guess it's not the worst thing in the world. Silver lining is, everyone is coming to it's the fact checking.
Turning off the fact checkers and say, this is stupid. I'm not interested in what you're trying to do here. What are you, a lawyer?
Yeah. Well, I was in the middle of that and saying, maybe that's not so silver. But I mean, the silver lining is that they won't be listening to these fact checkers for very long.
Right,
now,
exactly.
It's good
fact
if you have
have
real
just run themselves out of business. Thank you very much. It's actually a benefit and a boon to the country. Yeah. So the clip from the Wall speech that you didn't stay up to watch that's circulating is him getting up and emotionally talking about the fact that fertility treatments help him have kids. His first kid's name is Hope. He's talked about that.
Okay.
His younger kid, son, Gus, is neurodivergent. His learning disabilities.
Okay.
And as he's telling the story, he also adds a line that he didn't use in the stump speech, is saying, these kids mean the world to me. They are my world. And Gus, the son, jumps up, puts his hand on his heart, starts crying, points his finger, and says, that's my dad.
All right.
And that clip is circulating everywhere.
Wow.
Everywhere.
I haven't seen that.
And for people who say, well, he wasn't on before 11 o'clock, who freaking cares?
Yeah, well,
this
that's
clip
the
is being seen by 81 million people.
That's pretty incredible. I also saw that the last couple of days, Republicans had spent their time circulating what they thought were unflattering, I guess, pictures of Walz's daughter and criticizing and nitpicking at this, that, and the other thing. And I did see somebody point out that even in this photo, I think she's wearing the Harris-Walz hat, the campaign hat, the camo cap. And I did see somebody on social media pointing out, if I get to a point where my, I guess she's teenage.
Yeah. This is the Chelsea Clinton thing all over again, which, by the way, didn't work.
Right. Well, it's a bad idea just for the same reason that it's a bad idea to pick on kids at the convention in general.
And don't pick on Gus. You're nuts if you do that.
Well, that's crazy. But it's just as crazy to pick on his daughter as well. Is that Hope that we're talking about? Is there only, I don't know how many kids he's got, but leave him alone. But I thought a good point. If I get to a point where if my late teenage daughter is ever proud enough to wear a hat with my name on it at this stage when they could be, sullen and detached, I will consider my parenting to have been a great success.
Forget sullen and detached. It reminds me of the mini tour that J.D. Vance did while Harris and Walz were doing barnstorming in the 7 swing states.
Okay.
And J.D. Vance would have his rallies with 20 people,
Yeah.
And at one of them.
Wonderful. Yeah.
At one of them, they had a giant poster that said Harris in huge letters. Yeah. And underneath that was Walz, and it was behind him. It was the backdrop. And then underneath that, it said something, probably like they suck or something. I don't know what it was. It doesn't matter. his 20 people stood in front of the bottom line. You couldn't read it. All you could read is Harris Walz, and there's J.D. Vance on TV talking. You could turn the sound down, and it's basically a Harris Walz advertisement, which is what that hat was.
Always supposed to.
What's wrong with this picture?
Yeah. Watch with the sound off to figure out what's going on and whether you're doing it right. Between that and the early days when they had when they might have been papering over the Joe Biden with Kamala Harris, they had those signs where the top line didn't scan right and it just had the "you're fired," right? Kamala Harris, "you're fired," but you couldn't read the Kamala Harris part on TV, and it was Trump speaking or Vance speaking, and everybody's just holding up "you're fired" signs.
Right, yeah, exactly. We agree.
Master of the visual image, huh?
Yep.
Okay.
Who was that? It was Hakeem Jeffries who said that.
Oh.
Or said Trump is like the boyfriend who wants to come back.
Oh,
and,
yeah.
You're saying, look, no, I fired you already.
Yeah, right. Bro, we broke up with you for a reason. He was really good in delivering that one.
Good at that.
And he said something that made me think that maybe they're going to like pull out Taylor Swift tonight or something. He said, not only did we break up, bro, we broke up with you for a reason. We are never, ever, ever getting back together, which is
we are not going back.
That's the Taylor Swift. Well, that too, but Taylor Swift song line. And I was like, oh, he may know something that he's not supposed to let slip yet.
Maybe.
We'll see.
What has been known is maybe the Chicks will be there. Used to be the Dixie Chicks.
Oh, they're no longer Dixie. They get kicked out of Dixie.
The Chicks.
Yeah. All right.
They changed their name.
Updated.
Anyway, they're going to play.
KFC.
So we'll see who else. John Legend played last night.
Yeah.
Some of the best, and Stevie Wonder played. And
I saw that.
They got good music.
I understand
always why you would cut James Taylor, but at least they had the wisdom not to cut Stevie Wonder and John Legend.
Yeah, well, sure. Okay. Yeah. They give him another chance. Taylor can go on tour with them a little bit.
Taylor's on tomorrow. Really? Yeah. James Taylor.
Taylor Ham. We're just going to have breakfast. All right. Well, exciting night to look forward to.
And so we'll see what happens, but that'll wrap it all up. So this is the second night, and this is from the DNC. So on the second night, DNC averaged 20.6 million viewers across 12 networks, well above the second night of the RNC, which averaged 14.8 million. Mm-hmm. Streaming across DNC Harris Walz online platforms, that like YouTube, the first two nights of the convention were streamed by over 13 million people. So it had more than half of what you see on TV. But then there's digital content. This is where things have changed, and those idiot pundits, haven't caught up. They should talk to their kids. Yeah. The convention garnered 55 million views on partner-created content on the second night. Remember we were talking about the fact that the reporters were annoyed that the content creators were getting better seats?
You content creators. Yeah, they're bringing in the viewers.
30 million views on the first night, 55 million views on the second night. The 2024 Democratic National Convention proudly announces, I'm adding the proudly, credentialed over 200 content creators with a cumulative reach of 169 million people. That's more than voted in the 2020 election between the two sides.
Yes.
They know what they're doing. And that's why the reporters
that's where the eyeballs are. And, right. I was surprised by how many viewing options I actually had in the streaming world yesterday. And I don't know how the hell they can total all these things up. But, the partners that I guess I should have expected were working on this, but didn't know about. But I turned on the smart TV and I thought I was trying to go to the cable channels that we still get because there's weird things happening there, for one thing. But this was, I found available from the menu of the smart TV, the paper, The Hill, the trade mags that we read from all the time, had their own video feed, and it was available through the, the LG, that's the maker of the smart TV that I had, the LG channels, and I don't even know how this all works and who owns what, but there were a lot of print publications and a lot of streaming properties, all of which had a presence battling for your eyes on different platforms. I don't know how they keep track of them and total
well,
them.
Well, they do, though.
They must license them.
If you go back and look at that 81 million people watched page, they're talking about Roku and Hulu and all the different places that they are streaming.
Yeah, so I don't know why I'm surprised now that I think about it. They're able to like peer into my house and see what brand of cereal I'm eating while I'm watching TV. So I guess it shouldn't shock me that they can total up how many people are watching.
Meanwhile, a bunch of polls come out yesterday, and they're pretty eye-opening.
Okay.
All right. University of New Hampshire, I guess, is planning on invading Maine or something because they're paying real close attention to what's going on there. So they have a general election poll of Maine.
Yeah.
And whereas Harris had an 8-point lead prior, it's now Harris 58, Trump 41. That's a 17-point lead.
Well, she'll probably win
Same poll.
Congressional
so it went from 8 to 17. Not only that.
Yeah.
Okay. And this is something we need to talk about, at least mention, is that Maine, as you may recall, for those of you sophisticated listeners who like to pay attention to process, the way Maine votes is they have 2 different places and they allocate their electoral votes.
Yes. One, you go on a moose and ride to the polls.
That would be the northern, larger part, but the geographically smaller but more populous part, including Portland and along the coast, has more votes.
Yes.
But typically what happens is that Democrat wins the larger, smaller southern vote.
Smaller. Right.
And the
coastal vote
by population, and the Republican wins the larger by geography northern vote.
Mm-hmm.
However, Harris is leading in both now.
Well, it'll just be blue then. No weird stripes.
It'll just be blue, no weird stripes. And as we have said all along, Maine is the answer to Nebraska.
Yes,
because
right there.
As you will remember, Nebraska was threatening to change their process by which the Omaha area votes Democrat, but the rest of Nebraska votes Republican.
Mm-hmm.
And why didn't they make the change and say, okay, we're just going to get rid of this process and make all of Nebraska vote Republican? Because Maine said, if you do that, we'll do this. And now it doesn't even matter because Maine doesn't have to do it.
Yeah.
And Nebraska got the hint and they didn't change the rules, and the legislative session was over as of yesterday. And so don't worry about them changing the rules at the last minute to make Omaha part of the rest of the state and get rid of its special status as we do it separately, because that window's closed.
Okay, unless they.
Yesterday.
Okay, that's good news. Because the session closed,
Session's
or
over.
I warn you that you can call a special session. These things do happen, but I guess it probably won't. I don't know whether there's also a rule about no, you can't do that. Even if you call a special session, you can't change the balloting rules at this point in time. But they could ignore any rule. But
I don't know what the
will
exact
is not
rules
there.
are, because again, as we've said so many times, those with the gavel make the rules, but it's just not going to happen.
Yeah. All right. You're saying the more important thing is that the political will to even try it isn't there.
It's gone.
Then good. All right. That's fine. I also remind you that Kamala Harris has gone from, you said 8 points to 17 in Maine. And those darn kids, the Gen
home of George
Z,
H.W. Bush.
Yada, yada. That's true too, but also home of, I think, the oldest voting population in the country in Maine. As I recall hearing but fact check, some of them are not in the country. They left. They're on vacation. So you're wrong.
That blue area of Maine, by the way, stretches, as I said, along the coast, but it does include Kennebunkport.
Yeah. Which also stretches a little.
It goes as far as Camden, for those of you who know anything about Maine. Camden is just a lovely seaside place to live and vacation. But in any case, that's Maine.
Yes.
And then this morning, Texas has entered the conversation.
Well, they do from time to time. All right. What's
a
happening?
new Texas poll? Trump 49.5.
Yeah.
Harris 44.6. That's a less than 5-point lead for Trump.
Okay.
Ted Cruz 46.6. Colin Allred 44.5. That's a 2.1%
That's closer.
lead.
Yeah. Ted Cruz, one of the original weirdos, by the way.
Yes.
Don't forget him. He started the band.
Now listen. So we're talking a less than 5-point lead for Trump. The same pollster had Trump leading Biden 49-40 in June.
49-40. Okay.
And in that same poll, Trump's lead among independents has shrunk from plus 24 to plus 2.
Well, that's not going to help him at all.
Right? And Cruz is only plus 4 among independents. 14% undecided. If I were Ted Cruz, I would worry.
Well, yeah,
and I'm telling you, Cruz is more likely to lose than Rick Scott in Florida. Although you should support both if you wish. Don't throw your money away. But I'm telling you that
support the Democrats,
the way that the polls are looking right now is the Democrats are going to keep all of their tough seats, including Sherrod Brown in Ohio. They may lose Tester, but they might win Cruz. That would still give him a majority, 50-50 plus the vice president, who in this case would be Tim Walz.
It would be remarkable. And I know it's hard to believe. It's always, although he always gets a race, but it's hard to believe that in Texas. But again, my mind keeps going back to the number of solidly red states that have said, not only do we want to have a referendum on abortion rights in the state, but we're going to win it. And they do. And in some cases, they have to get near 60% to do it, and they do it.
Right.
It's overwhelmingly popular as a platform issue, and people are associating it with candidates up and down the ballot and are sick of it. And I mean, everybody knows that Ted Cruz has been at the root of the weirdness of the Republican Party for a long time. Like I said, one of the OG weirdos.
Right. So what matters in a close race?
Votes. So yard signs.
Ground game.
That's yard signs. Yard signs.
Absolutely. Why do I say that? Because this is Cap Times from Wisconsin.
All right.
Okay. Harris ground game in Wisconsin, 42,000 new volunteers, 600,000 doors knocked.
Okay. The doors are on board with this.
Right.
And they're getting knocked.
And remember, they did that double NBA stadium thing.
Yes, right.
With Chicago and Milwaukee.
They should do like 5 next time.
And they had 18,000 people in Milwaukee. And they're going all in Wisconsin with Ben Wickler and the Cheeseheads, you know.
Yeah.
And I looked at that Cheesehead picture, by the way, of everybody. And when Tony Evers was trying to read,
oh my gosh, yeah.
I
hope he was overcome with emotion.
Okay,
yeah.
When everybody was yelling and cheering, and Little John was doing Georgia, and Tony Evers was trying to read how the Wisconsin delegates were allocated.
Right.
And I don't know. I can't say this for sure, but to me, boy, he came across as like totally plastered.
He definitely lost his place a couple of times. He was very flustered. And then I understand the feeling. You screw something up and then you get that rising heat in your face.
I know. It's just, and the more you try to do it, the more you flub. And the more nervous you get, the more you flub, which is, by the way, worth a couple of points of privilege here. There's a saying something. So you watched everybody with the Cheeseheads do this, and my thought was, oh my God, look at that. The only thing that can stop Wisconsin is mice. But I talked to my
Swiss
friends
cheese?
here who are from Wisconsin, and they said, we love this stuff. Absolutely,
cheddar,
we would wear
right?
a Cheesehead.
Yeah, it's a big deal.
But in any case, there's Tony Evers getting
Everyone
flushed.
Gets
he wasn't drunk. He was just flustered.
Yeah.
Okay.
And
so he's trying to get that Information Act. And the point is, you take Tim Walz. You never heard of him. You throw him on the stage with the biggest possible lights on him. Everybody's staring at him. He was no Tony Evers.
Right.
He pulled that off brilliantly and beautifully.
Yes. Yeah.
That is not easy, and it's not to be expected. He's not Bill Clinton. He's not done this before.
Mm-hmm.
He had the best speech of the night, probably, maybe not the best lines, but some of the best lines. But if you add that Gus thing in, his son, he had the best speech of the night, and you couldn't assume that. He did great. And so when you saw everything, and when you saw how well Walz fits in with the role that Harris has carved out for him, it was so the right choice.
Yeah, it was great. A lot of people are being reassured. Remember that early on there was the back and forth before the choice was made, and there were partisans pushing for different reasons for different candidates. And, interesting. I'm just thinking back to the people saying, well, it really should be Shapiro because we've got to win Pennsylvania. And then I think now it's kind of become clear that, Walz is going to be extraordinarily popular in Pennsylvania too. I think there's a significant portion of the state
and Michigan.
That
he hunts.
Well, right. It's that swath, right, all the way across the northeastern tier that there's a commonality there that he rings those bells in a way that, as popular as Josh Shapiro is, he probably doesn't in the more rural parts of
Shapiro's a number one, and you need a number two.
Yeah.
And I went out and I wanted a number two, and I got one.
That sounds great. But that's exactly right. It would be very difficult. Josh Shapiro's a big personality. I mean, Tim Walz is a big personality, but a different kind of big personality. And you would have two sons on, SUN sons on the ballot with Harris.
I'll tell you how old I am.
Shapiro. Yeah.
You're saying this and I'm immediately thinking of Bugs Bunny and Yosemite Sam. And Yosemite Sam says to Bugs, this town ain't big enough for the two of us. And Bugs immediately builds like 3 suburbs. Says, how about now?
Yeah. Well, it's an
That's
expansion
what you do when you
of
get
the
two
playing
sons.
field. That's true. I mean, it's workable, it's doable, but we were in a bit of a hurry to get online and up and running, and
that's the thing.
These guys just
all being done
better
in like 100 days. It's phenomenal.
Yeah. So, all right, good, well done. We got one more night of it, and one more opportunity to comment on it if you're up for it tomorrow.
If it's a good night, I'll be up for it tomorrow.
Yeah.
So Harris is now above +3 in national polls for the first time in 538 average. And, the chances of her winning is still like 54-46. And I was chatting with Laksha Jain, who's one of the pollster predictors.
Yes.
Who kept saying, Harris is ahead. There's no question about it. And he gives it like a 56% chance or so for her to win, which is basically a toss-up. But, she's got the lead. It's not Trump's race to lose. Fine. But it's going to be a close race, and all this Texas polling and everything else is telling us it's a close race. And I said to him, why do you say that? Yes. Why are you assuming it's all static and she's not going to gain? And he said, basically because she's gotten the gains from getting the Democrats coalesced. And it's unclear whether or not she can actually persuade people. But with Tim Walz, maybe she can. And maybe she's got a cap of +5. And that would be fine. I would take that. That is a win.
Yeah. I mean, +5, in a closely divided nation, there isn't, but election, yes. +5 will do it. All right. Let's see what happens tonight. All right. Welcome back now to the Kagro in the Morning Show here on Netroots Radio. Guess what? I have a link here to a story that Justice sent, although it's in the Independent, the UK Independent, so I'm not entirely sure I'll be able to read the whole thing, but maybe not. Anyway, it says it's about Mike Lindell and his weird child molestation thing at the DNC, and I guess gives us some of the backstory about how all this worked. Mike Lindell follows through with plan to shave mustache for DNC. That's good news, I guess. I didn't realize he had that plan. Very far-reaching plan to shave his mustache. This was the idea, of course, of how he would go undercover, I guess, to get in because of how famous his mustache is. I don't know why he thinks that's the case, but he shaved his mustache for the DNC. He must have announced ahead of time, and maybe people said, nah, he would never dare. But he did dare. And then he went to the DNC and successfully accosted a 12-year-old. It says here that he gets into a spat in the headline with a 12-year-old influencer. Now, I guess that's the story. One, what is Noah doing there? Is he the child of a delegate who's being brought along? No, he's there in his own right as a 12-year-old influencer. That is to say, he's 12 and he influences other people, some of whom may also be 12, but that's not the point of it. Election conspiracy theorist, that's Lindell, was bested by preteen political influencer Noah, who told the former Trump advisor that he was full of crap. And they interestingly say full of C******P. I imagine that Noah was comfortable saying crap. It's interesting, just sort of sociologically, like is the Independent, is a UK paper, are they really that uncomfortable with the word crap? That's interesting, considering some of the other C words that the British are perfectly comfortable with, although I imagine that too would be asterisked in the newspaper. But crap, I think, that's interesting. Okay, different connotation, maybe. They have more video on this. Mike Lindell is mocked by a 12-year-old, and their video runs 2 minutes and 21 seconds, and I'm wondering if perhaps it's more revealing. But let me see what they have in print here. Pro-Donald Trump conspiracy theorist Mike Lindell has fulfilled his promise, thank God, of shaving off his mustache and infiltrating the Democratic National Convention, where he was seen getting into a spat with a 12-year-old influencer. It's just odd that he decided to sneak in the first place and then said, kids. I'm not saying that it's definitive proof that he's a wackadoodle pervert, but, I also happen to think that's the case. And so it will say it confirms priors for me. The MyPillow CEO, who attended the Republican National Convention last month, had previously announced, and thank God, and I'm sure everyone was on the edge of their seats, announced in a video on X his plans to go, quote, incognito at the Democratic Party's event by donning a disguise so inconspicuous that, quote, you won't recognize me. Donning a disguise, of course, means putting the disguise on, as opposed to donning. What he did do with his mustache, undonned it, he got rid of it. Now, the disguise was a green blazer, which is a terrific disguise if you are going to Augusta National Golf Course, but a terrible disguise if you are attempting to move among Democrats. A green blazer and a weirdo hat. Greg said boater, but I don't think of it as, I don't know my hat terminology, but it's a straw fedora, I would say. And, what can I tell you about that? You could probably get away with that better at the Republican National Convention as incognito. They do love the fedoras. Even the younger set love the fedoras, perhaps ironically, but part of the weirdo set, the milady set, the incels who think that, the chicks dig it when you refer to them as milady. But anyway, gosh, they're weird people. Mike Lindell considerably older than that, so it was even weirder. So I guess doing sort of the hello, fellow kids, greetings, fellow youngsters. I don't know. I don't think I guess people would probably recognize Mike Lindell if they saw him at the DNC. My other question, and I don't know if it's answered in this write-up or not, is my general understanding of the way these conventions work. And I've been to 2, I think, that your credential. The credentials aren't what I would call super tightly controlled, although it's been a number of years, and security theater being what it is, and of course the desire to actually control access to the place for political reasons as well as security reasons. I imagine it's only gotten tougher, but you have to have some kind of credential and show it. I don't know how closely they're examined on your way in to the outer perimeter. Getting to the floor of the convention requires higher credentialing. So it's certainly possible to get in and mix in the lobby of the arena that they're having it. But you do get checked at outer perimeters and stuff. But okay, so he got a hold of these things. Unknown whether somebody just threw him some. Sometimes media outlets get a bunch, and they're not that tightly controlled, and you sometimes handed a stack of them, and it's okay to give them out as you see fit. Now, if somebody comes and makes trouble, plants a bomb, shoots somebody, they'll trace it to you. But just walking around in a green hat or green jacket and a hat accosting children, unless you tuck one under your arm and run to your van down by the river, they're not really going to bother you, I guess, even if you molest the kids out in the lobby, or, physically, not physically, but, verbally accost them. Anyway, here's the big stunt. He goes in, he's wearing a hat, and on Wednesday it became apparent that Lindell had pulled off his cunning plan with a newly clean-shaven Lindell seen at the United Center in Chicago, Illinois, sporting a Panama hat. Thank you. Leave it to the British to tell us what kind of hat it is. A Panama hat and a pair of sunglasses. The well-known incognito disguise. I'm surprised he didn't go with the Groucho Marx glasses. But that would have given it all away as he shaved off the mustache. And if he put on a pair of glasses that had a mustache on it, okay. It doesn't work for him. But despite his distinct lack of upper lip hair, Lindell failed to manage to slip under the radar. Footage from the event shows the former Trump advisor having a series of spats with other attendees. Also not great for incognito, you're getting visibly into fights. But that was the real point of his going there, to spout his conspiracy nonsense to people who, weren't going to believe it and have it on film as proof that only he knows the truth and that the blind Democrats just refuse to, accept all the dumb stuff he's saying. In one video, Lindell is seen spouting a number of baseless claims, including a false claim that hundreds of thousands of votes were missing in Georgia during the 2020 election. 257,000 votes. This happened last week. A judge ruled in Georgia that are missing from the 2020 election, he said. There is no evidence for this, with the closest news headline being an Associated Press fact check, which actually debunks that claim. There wasn't any activity in the Georgia courts on that question, and there hasn't been for some years now. So to say it happened last week and to have made that the heart of your claim, should get you, an F on the fact check, right? 10 Pinocchios. It was at this moment that the 67-year-old businessman met his match, 12-year-old Democratic influencer Noah, with the K. So your source is trust me, bro? We heard him say that. The young content creator quipped in a video posted to his 43,000 X followers. No, Lindell fiercely retorted. It's in your papers in Georgia. You need to read your news. It isn't. You're full of crap, Noah concluded as he walked away from the heated confrontation. Noah has quickly become a crowd favorite at the DNC and has been spotted mingling with big names including Don Lemon and Stacey Abrams. His Instagram also features him in photos with Harris. In a video shared by Lindell on X from the DNC, he exclaims, wow. Isn't that great? He exclaims, wow, as he sits in a barber's chair in awe at his new look. Oh, okay. So he shaved off the mustache and says, wow, that is quality content. The election denier then explains that he's attending the DNC to promote his own event, which he says features several Chicago Democrats who have switched allegiance back to Trump. We're going to interview. We're going to find people, he says. Lindell founded MyPillow before becoming a staunch Trump ally and peddler of baseless conspiracy theories. He once promoted the cardiotoxic substance oleandrin as an effective treatment for COVID-19 in the summer of 2020. Thanks for the toxicity. Months later, Lindell continued to falsely claim that the 2020 election was rigged and played a significant role in financing unsuccessful attempts to overturn the result. He later falsely claimed that members of the anti-fascist group Antifa were behind the January 6th Capitol riot, dressed in disguise as Trump's cronies. None of them wearing green blazers, as I recall. In February, Lindell was ordered to pay $5 million, not including interest, to a man who in 2021 accepted his Prove Mike Wrong challenge by proving that Lindell's so-called evidence showed no widespread manipulation of the 2020 election. And, of course, he's refused to pay that. So he's got a track record of this kind of dumb stuff, sort of wondering whether the rest of the video that's in the Independent piece shows more of the discussion between Lindell and Noah, or is it, anchors setting the whole thing up and occupying the other 2 minutes of the video? Let's see if we can roll it here. It'll take some time to load, but is it going to do it at all? Here we go. Mike Lindell is mocked by 12-year-old influencer Noah. I got to turn the sound up on this thing, and let's see if it'll give us any more information. Oh, no, of course not. First, it's going to play us a long commercial, which we'll roll through, but with the sound off. so that it doesn't annoy us a great deal. And is this going to be one of those 30-second commercials? Boy, okay. All right. Almost done, and they're not paying anything for the commercial, so no. All right, let's see. Oh, okay. This is more hilarity here. Let me turn this up, because if I heard correctly, that's Noah with his own, I don't know if he's got his own microphone, but he says, "Hey, Mike, can I just ask a quick question?" So, Mike Lindell's whole cover is blown right away by the 12-year-old. So that's pretty amazing by itself. All right, let's see.
Hey, Mike. Hey, can I just ask a quick question, sir? Yeah, why are you denying the results of the fair and free election?
I didn't deny any of the results. I'm trying to get rid of paper ballots and get rid of...
That's pretty funny. I'm trying to get rid of paper ballots. Oh, well, actually, of course, everybody who knows anything about Mike Lindell's, purpose in life is, of course, he's trying to move everything to paper ballots. So, okay, he screws up and says the wrong thing, and no one knows it right off the bat. I misspoke. Okay, fine. Let's roll some more. Delayed response to all my clicks today.
I go to paper ballots. Ask him what proof.
Paper balancing.
Which election are you talking about? There was one. No. There was one down in Georgia. 3 Democrats.
I'm from Georgia.
Okay, there's 3 Democrats in Georgia in the summer of 22. She's a good friend of mine. She got 0 votes in her own precinct. So Brenda, I'm not telling you her last name.
This is so noisy. It's really quite annoying, but. I don't know. I don't know what he's claiming. 3 Democrats, good friends of mine. I'm sure they're great friends. And all right, so that's the claim. 0 votes in her own precinct, so that couldn't happen. And I don't know this story, and it doesn't matter. And but as Noah rightly probably, as this is where he questions him, what's your source for that? Because I don't know, maybe that's what he thought happened last week. All right, let's see.
But let me tell you, the proof. They looked into it in Georgia. Crooked Brad Bassett, your Republican Secretary of State, he looked into it and said, it was a computer error. They gave her back her vote. She went from 3rd to 3rd. She's a friend of mine. Another gal, Democrat, 4 counties over in Georgia, she got 4,600
So where's the proof?
She wasn't on the ballot.
You want me to take your word for it, right?
No, this is in the paper.
So what's your own thing? She's an elected official.
Let me tell you. In Georgia, I will tell you, an Obama appointed judge last fall, this case been going on 3.5 years. Alex Halderman, this is in your state, so you should be up on that. Alex Halderman. He's a Democrat.
Okay. There is a brief look into the camera by Noah here. I guess he must have his own camera because he's an influencer. He's producing content, what have you. And he gives that fourth wall look at the camera, but it's just like, oh my God, I can't believe what this guy is spewing. But that gives us something. There's somebody now, a candidate to look at, Alex Halderman. I'm not familiar, but I mean, let's take a look. Alex Halderman. There's an Alex Halderman. Okay. I mean, I really don't know, but so what comes up? J. Alex Halderman. Is this who we're talking about? Professor of Computer Science and Engineering at the University of Michigan. Do we think that's sometimes the people who are involved in the supposed forensic analysis of the computer voting, electronic voting stuff. Is this maybe somebody that has gotten that Lindell and others have used to try to bolster their claims? I mean, I really have no idea who this is, but he was saying that it sounded like he either mixed things up and thought that he was a candidate for office. But yeah, here's something about electronic voting. After the 2016 United States presidential election, computer scientists, including Halderman, urged the Clinton campaign to request an election recount in Wisconsin, Michigan, and Pennsylvania. While Clinton won New Hampshire, was up for the purpose of excluding the possibility that the hacking of electronic voting machines had influenced the outcome. Halderman testified before the Senate Select Committee on Intelligence in 2017 at one of the Russian interference in the U.S. election hearings. I mean, I don't know what to tell you how this guy comes up, but it doesn't appear that he's a candidate for office in Georgia or anywhere else. Let's play some more of this annoying video.
And he's also a cyber guy, and he looked into the machine, and he said there's problems. That judge last fall ruled in your state. He said, we're going to look into this, we're bringing it to court, and the experts say there's problems, and she said, and if you question it, you're not a conspiracy theorist. So I got to take off my tinfoil hat. Now guess that. In her courtroom on January 9th in Georgia.
What?
Now maybe
it's typical Lindell, certainly. It just spews a lot of words, and he's also he's a Democrat and he ran for office. He didn't, but he's also a cyber guy, and he said that something happened, and then I got to go to a court, and she said I wasn't a conspiracy theorist, so I took off my hat. I think this is what he's saying. I don't know what this is supposed to mean, and Noah is just about dying here, laughing and just cracking a smile. He's very patient. He's not laughing in his face. But it's clear that he doesn't buy anything that's coming out of his mouth, and why should he? Let's see. I was wondering if maybe I should turn the sound down turn down the overdrive a little bit. Lindell is kind of overbearing, and the crowd noise is something else too. All right, let's see
this in the news. Maybe you're not up on things.
I am. I'm up on your bankruptcy too.
Alex Haldeman with a ballpoint pen hacked into the machine in front of the judge and switched the whole election in front of her. Now that case is still in Georgia. She has not ruled on it yet. That's in your state. You want to know more in your state?
So your source, you haven't provided any source.
257,000 votes. This happened last week. A judge ruled in Georgia that are missing from the 2020 election. This just came out. You're behind you.
So your source is trusted.
Again, I love that. It just came out. It just came out. Right. It didn't just come out. It has nothing to do with it. But this is the sort of thing that both he and, both he and Donald Trump sort of just do this. Or as Greg reminds us, it's the Gish Gallop, right? You just spew things and continue to sound exasperated. And, the only thing a normal person can do is say, well, all right, has this been printed in a newspaper anywhere? No, there's a conspiracy throughout the media to hide this. He's sounding more like Alex Jones every minute, too. All right. I think we get the gist of this, and it answers some of the questions, not how he got in, but it does answer the question about how we get to this point. Looks like Noah recognizes him and approaches him. So that's kind of interesting and speaks well for Noah. I'm also a little bit curious. I'll have to see if we can find more reports on it, about the presence of these influencers and content creators that are making the traditional reporters so upset by handing over space to them. I wonder whether, the original, I've said it before, I think, on the show, probably a couple of times. One of the original inspirations for this podcast, for this live stream, for the radio show was, that back in the day when I was at Daily Kos and producing the content that developed into Congress Matters, but just the daily coverage of what was going on Capitol Hill. I guess we were ahead of our time in this, and we couldn't convince anybody to give us the space that the Democratic National Committee is now giving to these influencers. I could have been an influencer. These influencers and content creators. I'm not certain that this is exactly what they're doing, but they're certainly producing content, their own take on what's happening at the convention, perhaps their own running commentary on things as they go, as the speeches are made. My original idea for, the multimedia approach that became this show was to leverage the growing influence of Daily Kos and to get ourselves credentialed ourselves. At that point, it was ourselves to get Daily Kos credentialed by the House media galleries, both the print gallery and the multimedia, the House radio and television gallery, such that we would be able to, at that point, tap into the government-produced television feed from the floors of the House and Senate, right? We've been through these rules, and I think it came up again during the period in which there was no elected Speaker of the House, while they were still struggling to get through their 15 ballots to elect, the Republicans were to elect Kevin McCarthy as their speaker, and there were for those couple of days where there was no speaker, there were no House rules restricting the use of the cameras that are usually feeding C-SPAN, right? And everyone was commenting on, there's so many more angles and so much more interesting coverage, just visually interesting coverage from the floor of the House. And it was explained, the reason being here that the C-SPAN cameras they're using their own cameras and they're not using the fixed cameras, which are owned and controlled by the House of Representatives themselves. And, it was a weird peeling back of the layers of the onion that make up what you get to see on C-SPAN. And we explained that these cameras ordinarily are fixed and the angles that they're allowed to use are restricted. There are House rules that restrict it. And during this brief period here, C-SPAN was allowed to use their own cameras, send their own cameramen down onto the floor, bring extra cameras in. So the feed was much more interesting and revealing and visually interesting. And once there was an elected speaker and there were rules in place, they went back to the old ways. But remember, these are cameras owned by the government and run by government employees. And the feed is sent to the radio and television gallery and all the networks if they want floor footage. They have the same limited choice of angles and such, but they can pull that feed as members of the gallery, credentialed members of the gallery, from the board and, uplink it by satellite, send it back home, and they can use it in their news broadcasts. So local member of Congress speaks, they pull the video that way. There's one and only source of that video, the official stuff from the government that films it itself. But C-SPAN is where most people see it. And I guess they come to think, since no one else is generally spending this much time showing floor video, that C-SPAN is producing it. And of course, when you turn on your television, it's got the little graphic in the corner that says it's C-SPAN. But that's something they overlay on the government feed. The government is videoing this thing, making it available to everybody. Generally speaking, C-SPAN's the only one interested in taking it. They pipe it out, put their own logo over it, and put it on their air as C-SPAN content. And my thought was, we could do the same thing. It's just that there's no other network that's interested in having that much congressional feed. But it's the same stuff and it's available to everyone. If we could get credentialed, we could pipe out the same video and put the Daily Kos or whatever you wanted feed on there, or not the feed, but the Chiron, the graphics that say this is now Daily Kos coverage of what's happening in the House and or Senate. And while C-SPAN wisely, I think, opts to put no commentary over what's going on, you'll see it at the State of the Union, how things are different. It's the same feed going to ABC, CBS, NBC, Fox, what have you, and C-SPAN. But C-SPAN is the only one with a policy of saying, shut up, don't talk until the president is done talking. And then we can bring on our own experts and do analysis, whereas on ABC, CBS, NBC, they love to talk over it, but which is not a problem in itself, because, not every word is precious, right? But they just add commentary that's, generally speaking, quite dumb. Anyway, my thought was, why don't we add commentary that's quite dumb, except it's our kind of dumb, the sort of thing that we enjoy and understand. What if we had the same video that C-SPAN has, but violate their policy of not talking over it and instead explain what's going on while it's going on? And that would probably occasionally encompass saying, this is an extraordinarily dumb or false thing that's being said, let's say, by a Republican. And here's why. Or when Democrats are speaking, why are they doing it this way? What is this motion about? How come they're not just doing it this way? Why don't they just offer an amendment that says X? And you could be explaining this the whole time and doing your own running commentary over these things. Well, nobody had ever heard of that. And Daily Kos is too partisan, and so yargle bargle. But we weren't too partisan for the Democratic National Convention. That's true. but we were, I guess, or at least this thought was, ahead of its time. The idea that we should be able to grab on to the official video, but put our own spin on things and stream it out. Although it probably took a long, long time to convince Democratic National Committee folks that these influencers could be trusted with that feed or could be trusted to be seen on the floor and doing their own interviews. I'm glad we got around to that level of trust finally. That too took an awful long time. And my recollection is back in the earlier days when they were just, convincing themselves that yes, they ought to give some credentials that would give some limited floor access and press center access to Daily Kos in the middle of these conventions in 2008, for instance. They were, they sort of mistrusted the whole arrangement. And, speaking of, I guess the reporters now complaining that their accommodations both inside and outside the hall are no good. Well, boy, did they put the Denver convention in 2008, did they put Daily Kos as far away from the action as possible? Happens a lot. I mean, every hotel room in the place is booked. But as it happens, I think we got booked in a hotel that was scheduled for demolition immediately after we vacated the place. Amazing. Hi, everybody. It's me, David. Let's change things up from the old fundraising pitch for just a minute and talk instead about how you can be a part of our show. If you've got a smartphone or any other electronic recording device, why not sit down and record a segment for us? Read us an important article and give us your take. Or read one of your own original essays, or even just give us your commentary on something you'd like to share that's important to you. Then send the file to me at kagrox@gmail.com, and I'll try and work it into the show. Short segments, a few minutes in length, are easiest to fit in. And of course, I can't always guarantee that I'll be able to play everything, but if you've ever shouted at your radio or TV about something you wish was being covered, here's your chance to change that. Make the show your own. Send your submissions to me at kagrox@gmail.com. All right, welcome back now to the Kagro in the Morning Show here on Netroots Radio. We're not inside the Democratic National Convention. But, yeah, that was some story. They really, back in 2008, this was sort of the first time that they actually, I think, well, maybe 2004, did they credential? I just didn't go, I guess. But, probably not. 2004 might have been a little early. 2008 might have been the first time that they credentialed, that is to say, gave any sort of access inside the perimeter to Daily Kos or any of the blogs at the Democratic National Convention. They were sort of slow in coming around to that. And the space that was, what was offered was, I don't know, you can go to the press filing center and sit there if you want to. And I think there was a limited number of hall floor passes for, the early days and the speeches that even the network television folks weren't covering. And we were mostly, I think, out of there by 8 p.m., as my recollection. But because there was such limited access, but such great interest in it, just by the way, filling in some of the blanks and speaking to the history of the online influencer movement. I guess we were influencers before there was such a thing. But the accommodations offered, and I don't mean just the hotel rooms, but the accommodations offered inside the hall for the number of people who had this tremendous interest. Imagine having, hundreds of bloggers from around the country having so much interest that they were willing to buy themselves plane tickets to Denver to cover this convention and say, we don't actually want that. We're actually not that interested in cultivating that. And so what ended up happening was that the Daily Kos organizers and others got together and said, we're going to organize our own venue. The big tent. Does everybody remember that? Of course, that was the phrase, right? And borrowing from the political rhetoric of the time. Big tent. Here's an actual big tent. We're going to put up an actual big tent in Denver, on a vacant lot in Denver, owned by, I think a friendly progressive type person or organization that allowed us to do this thing, but actually erecting a large tent with all sorts of things going on inside. We held panels inside, but there was room, space, tables to sit and blog, and Wi-Fi, and everything you needed in order to do the job. Some beer that was there. I think that was the New Belgium brewery, bringing their beer creations there. That was nice. But it was a great experience and all, but it was something that bloggers had to create for themselves. Now, of course, you're inside the hall, and it's years later, these things have evolved. That's nice. But they were still very suspicious of bloggers in that time. Anyway, by the way, I found out a little bit more. I wanted to just see. Sometimes with idiots like Mike Lindell, it's worth it. Sometimes it's not worth it. Try to find out, just maybe if you're curious, what makes them so crazy, or what is it? What facts on the ground are they distorting so that they can, continue their weird conspiracy theory nonsense? You're okay. So I followed some of the clues. He dropped the names of Alex Halderman. I think he said Holderman, but I'm not certain whether, that was just a slip of the tongue. But there is a J. Alex Halderman, and I looked him up, and he's got a Wikipedia thing. He's cybersecurity may or may not be how he describes what it is that he does. But he's very specifically telling Noah, well, just the other day, last week, a judge ruled something, blah, blah, blah. And he's a candidate. He's not a candidate for office. I think we've established that. That would certainly be in his Wikipedia profile somewhere. So I said, what's the last time? Let me take a Google search of the news for Alex Halderman. When was the last time he was mentioned in the news? And really that comes back in January, February. Here's an article from NBC News. Georgia's controversial electronic voting machines face their biggest test yet. This is the context in which Halderman is working, I guess. Closing arguments in a years-long legal fight, that's something like what Lindell was saying, over the integrity of the battleground states elections wrapped up Thursday, this is a while ago, with potentially major implications for 2024. Okay, so it's something to watch, something to be interested in. This is dated, though, February 1st, 2024, not just last week or anything like that. Could be that there's some action that happened just last week, but it's not coming up in the initial news searches. Here's what we learned from Jane C. Tim, writing for NBC News back in February. A federal judge will soon rule, so presumably has ruled sometime between February and now, soon rule on whether Georgia's hotly contested Dominion voting machines. Now I see. Dominion. Right. The company that sued and utterly destroyed Lindell and others into their stupid claims of electronic interference in the voting and hacking, etc. But okay, Dominion voting machines hotly contested, right? Vulnerable, they say, to hacking, and they violate voters' constitutional rights. A decision that threatens to scramble the battleground states' election procedures heading into the 2024 presidential campaign. So this is not Dominion's lawsuit against the wackadoodles, but rather, I don't know who sued who here, but in February they said a judge would soon rule on Georgia's hotly contested voting machines and whether they're vulnerable to hacking. A sprawling 6-year-long legal fight over the integrity of Georgia's elections wrapped up in a federal courthouse in Atlanta on Thursday afternoon, back in February. Actually, probably late January, teeing up a ruling that could shake voters' faith in their electoral system and further fuel unfounded claims of fraud on the right. And I guess it's done that. The trial is not about the massive voter fraud former President Donald Trump claimed occurred there in 2020, but didn't and couldn't prove it. Those lawsuits failed in the months after the election, and no actual fraud or malfeasance has been proved in this trial, despite what Lindell has to say about it. Rather, the case is about whether the system is so fundamentally vulnerable to hacking and errors that it violates voters' constitutional rights. A Good Government group brought this suit in 2017, well before Trump started blaming Dominion voting machines for his 2020 loss, although he claimed early on, because he thought he was going to lose in 2016, that everything was rigged against him, including the voting machines. Still, the trial, and in particular the testimony of cybersecurity expert J. Alex Halderman, who demonstrated a dramatic machine hack in open court, has been seized on by his allies on the right as proof of election conspiracy theories. Of course, I had heard that there were cybersecurity experts who are able to demonstrate how to hack such a machine. But it's very interesting. Can it be done? Yeah, it can be done. The question is, could it be done without detection. And I think, the better demonstration would have been for Halderman to give his testimony, but then at the end reveal, and by the way, while I was distracting you with my testimony, you were paying attention to my doing the normal thing in this venue. I hacked this machine while you weren't even looking. I mean, the thing is, the real question is, can you walk in, say you're here to vote, and while doing something that looks like a typical voter simply casting their ballot on the machine, pull off a hack like that without it being detected? Like, hey, why is this voter opening the machine? Like, I don't know that that's real. It's true you can hack a machine that way, but can you do that in a polling place in a way that doesn't get you caught immediately? That I still don't really understand why they think that can happen. Anyway, in 2019, U.S. District Judge Amy Totenberg barred the state from using its last completely digital voting system over concerns about the security of the paperless system, the computers. Okay, worried about the security. So in 2019, that comes before 2020, a federal judge barred the state from using the last completely digital voting system. So they didn't use it. Okay, so what's the complaint? I don't know, we still lost. The state purchased and implemented the existing Dominion system with a whopping $107 million contract, which includes ballot marking devices that allow voters to make their choices on electronic voting machines. The machines then print receipts with plain text summaries of the voters' choices and QR codes that the ballot scanners use to count the voters' choices. In closing arguments at the trial, plaintiffs argued the machines burdened voters and made fraud possible. The QR codes could hide a hacked election, and that voters do not even check their ballot receipts to confirm their votes are being properly cast. I don't know whose fault that is, but maybe it's true. The plaintiffs want the state to abandon the existing system in favor of a hand-marked paper ballot system and urged judges to replicate her previous ruling to ban the current system. So she banned one system. They implemented another one. They want her to ban this other one as well. They fundamentally do not understand the election security, and it's frightening, said David Cross, an attorney for the plaintiffs. The state has pointed to security measures, it says, make a hacked election practically impossible. Election audits that review written results on the ballot, not the QR codes, and state rules that require poll workers to urge voters to check their ballots, too. We're not saying it's not possible, but the reason they won't quantify the risk is because they can't, said Josh Belinfante, a lawyer for the defense. Totenberg, who was appointed to the district court by President Barack Obama, as Lindell claims, wearily quipped in court Wednesday, back in late January, early February, that the case has been going on forever. She made it clear in a ruling in November that she does not believe she has the legal authority to force the hand-marked ballot system on that the plaintiffs seek. The court cannot order the Georgia legislature to pass legislation creating a paper ballot voting system or judicially impose a statewide paper ballot system as injunctive relief in this case, she wrote then. And a reminder, who runs the Georgia legislature and why isn't Mike Lindell mad with Republicans over this? I guess it's as revealing as Greg's interest in why pro-Palestinian protesters don't waste any of their time protesting Republicans, even though Republicans are terrible for their positions, and yet they don't spend any time protesting them. I understand they really just don't think that they can make Republicans move and hope that Democrats will move because they will feel internally what Republicans are incapable of feeling and want to accommodate people who are a part of the party, but not so among Republicans. Anyway, she suggested, the judge did, that there is relief she could offer, like additional audits or ballots without QR codes. Gabriel Sterling, the chief operating officer in the Georgia Secretary of State's office, testified that overhauling an election system in an election year, 2020, when they first started this thing, would be nightmarish because of all the training and new policies and procedures the state would be forced to implement rapidly. Georgia's presidential primary this year was March 12th, very close in proximity to where the rulings were being made. You are going to disenfranchise, especially in Fulton County, thousands of people, and I don't think anybody wants that, he testified. I do think people want that. I think Mike Lindell wants that. I think Republicans, generally speaking, the Trump Republicans, MAGA Republicans, do want to disenfranchise thousands of people in Fulton County. I guess that Gabriel Sterling doesn't. I mean, I still think that that's true. But, I don't know. Anyway, he's being kind, I think, in giving his testimony, defending the state's system as efficient and secure. Fulton County, of course, home to Atlanta, Georgia's largest city. Hand-marked paper ballots led to a nearly 8-month battle over who won a Minnesota Senate seat in 2008, he added. Paper ballots, hand-marked, notoriously slow in the counting. Whatever Totenberg rules could force the state to enter a contentious presidential election cycle with an election system that a federal judge does not trust. Some on the right have already claimed that the case is itself proof of fraud. I can take off my tinfoil hat. That's what the judge said. We're not a conspiracy theory guy anymore. Praise the Lord. MyPillow CEO Mike Lindell said on a podcast in November while wearing an actual tinfoil hat because of how cool he is. So his interpretation of the judge's ruling here, not giving them what they want, is that, well, she said I wasn't a conspiracy theory guy anymore. That's what he was referencing in this video from just yesterday. The judge said it. It's not conspiracy theory. It happened just last week. Okay, if last week is February, and she doesn't say that, then your story holds up. Lindell, a salesman of foam pillows and conspiracy theories about election fraud, is one of many on the right who have championed, that's a great line, the claims and Halderman's research in particular. The court in January, Halderman used a borrowed pen to quickly bypass the election software and access the machine's operating system within seconds before he later flipped a vote on the machine from George Washington to Benedict Arnold, a revolutionary officer who defected to the British. The hack required limited and cheap supplies, he testified. Yes, but can you do it surreptitiously is my question. The state has sought to discredit Halderman's research, arguing that real-world security measures would prevent the kind of hacks he testified about, which he developed after having spent 3 months with a Fulton County election machine. In a statement, a spokesperson for Dominion defended its machines, and I guess I understand what they mean here is if you're given a machine and they say do whatever you want with it for as long as you want to do with it, can you come up with a method of hacking it and doing so quickly? Like, could the hack be implemented quickly? Yes. Surreptitiously? Not sure. And how do you arrive at this? Like, in other words, if you give a cybersecurity expert unlimited amounts of time to monkey with the machine however they want, can they come up with something? Yes, they can. Will anyone else come up with that thing? Because they aren't going to be given 3 months of unlimited access to a Fulton County voting machine. How will they, could they by accident stumble upon the same hacking procedure? Maybe. So then we're back to the question of, can you pull it off? Can you walk into a polling place and do it? And if you're saying, I can, without being detected, flip a vote from one candidate to another. Can you flip more than one? Not demonstrated. Can you flip one? Well, why don't you just cast the vote you want instead of flipping it? What it doesn't say is, can you go in and flip the last person to vote and flip their vote? I don't know. I don't know what he demonstrated in there. Anyway, Mr. Halderman's experiment did not happen in the real world, and he had far more than a Bic pen. Under court directive, Halderman was given all the passwords, security cards, exact election files, and more. Everything he would need to try to cause trouble. He also faced none of the numerous mandated physical and operational safeguards in place during actual elections, the spokesperson said. In part, the U.S. Cybersecurity and Infrastructure Security Agency has already concluded that all of Mr. Halderman's assertions are mitigated by existing election procedures. Deirdre Holden, not Halderman. Deirdre Holden, the longtime supervisor of elections in Paulding County, echoed that sentiment. noting that she has poll workers supervise voter interactions with ballot marking devices, but headlines about hacked machines fueled doubt in her work and reminded her of the elections in 2020 and 2021 when she and others received graphic, violent threats. The trial is only fueling this fire. It needs to be settled and we need to move on, she said. Holden noted that election workers' annual conference, the conference, which once focused on discussions about election best practices and provisional ballots, now includes active shooter training, briefings from the FBI and the Department of Homeland Security, and instructions on how to administer Narcan in case a package with fentanyl is sent to election workers. That's become our reality, she said. It is a reality in which having a conversation about election integrity is complicated at best, and when election systems are portrayed as completely safe or unsafe. We tend to think of driving as safe, not because nothing bad ever happened in automobiles, but because we know how to manage that risk. And when people think about election technology in the same way, we'll all be better off, said Mark Lindemann, the Policy and Strategy Director at Verified Voting, a group that promotes responsible use of technology in elections. Risks can be managed, he stressed. Georgia isn't hurtling off a cliff toward certain doom. Nothing here is all that terrifying, but yeah, Georgia can probably do better. So in case you were wondering what the reality was at the center of all this, by the way, I also took a look to see whether there was any current news about the judge, Amy Totenberg, and she too just does not appear in the news, as far as I can tell, since late February of 2024, in which Fox 5 Atlanta reports under the headline, "Could Federal Judge End Computer Voting in Georgia?" I guess maybe she could have, and I guess she didn't, because you'd think there would be some more discussion about her later than this. Again, Georgians, a federal judge expected to soon issue an order that could either lead to big changes in how Georgians vote, and I guess we haven't heard about those, or side with state election officials who argue that the current system is safe and secure. So, to the extent that there's been anything by the Obama-appointed judge in Georgia, it happened months ago, and it was not to find in Lindell's favor. And I guess Noah was just right about that. Isn't that something? Even at 12 years old. Okay, so how about some other topics for discussion? I wasn't planning on spending that much time on this, but what the hell? We just went ahead and did it anyway. All right, there's a lot of important things. What can we fit in and what's most important in the next couple of minutes? I don't know, but here's one. Something that happened last night, and I guess it's still happening. The Palestinian Americans protesting that the Democratic National Convention has not given any of them a chance to speak from the convention stage. And it doesn't look like they're going to either. I just thought this was kind of an interesting thing. I don't really, there's, I guess, probably very little point in getting into the substance behind the protest. I mean, we're not going to solve the Palestinian crisis here, and it's not going to be me solving it. But something we discussed a little earlier when Greg told us the story of the Palestinian Americans at one of the Harris rallies who managed to get onto the welcoming line, as people will do. They were perfectly welcome there, and said, hey, they managed to get a minute with Kamala Harris and say, we'd really like to have some discussions with you about the situation and how we think Democrats and your campaign ought to address the situation and what we'd like to see you do differently. To which she says, yes, let's make sure that we have that discussion. And so it sounded like there was a, yes, we should talk. And then at the same rally later on, once the speaking started, the folks who had, I guess, thought that they had secured a meeting decided that what they should do with their time thereafter was try to disrupt Harris's speech. And we went over the dynamics of that when it happened. And we said, well, all right, there's no telling what the best tactics are. in this situation. But, from our analysis from outside, it looks like, well, if you really believed you had maybe secured a meeting, and maybe they didn't believe they had secured a meeting, there were a couple of explanations. They could have believed that they weren't really going to get a substantive meeting, or it was just going to be, a farce. They were going to meet with them to say that they met with them, but really not listen. Or maybe there was constituency issues, right? They had been sent by a group of Palestinians who were really strident and wanted to see confrontation, and they would lose their credibility with their Palestinian American constituency if they didn't produce that confrontation, even though it would risk the meeting that they may or may not have believed they had actually secured minutes earlier. Not sure. But the same dynamic appears to be playing out here at the Democratic National Convention as uncommitted delegates. This is how they're, the last holdouts, I guess, to Kamala Harris's nomination here are the delegates who are remaining uncommitted and casting their votes in the roll call as uncommitted because they're holding out. They either oppose, it's really difficult to describe what their position is because there's probably 100 positions, but essentially they're dissatisfied with the Democratic Party's response and the nominee's response to Gaza, the war in Gaza. And understandably, and they certainly don't have to knuckle under and cast their ballots if they can't find it within their hearts to do so. That's fine, and they moved on. These other states, the state chairman cast those ballots as undecided and uncommitted, and then went on and nominated her. And they're just not holding a large enough block of uncommitted votes to make a difference in the outcome. So that's just going to limit your leverage. But Alex Seatswald, reporting on this stuff for NBC, pointed out some interesting stuff, including why it doesn't seem to be working out for the Palestinian Americans and in this particular aspect of their protest. Why it's not working out overall, different question. But why are they not getting so far the chance to speak from the stage at the convention? I think everybody kind of understands that the convention is supposed to be a big unity rally for endorsing Kamala Harris and Tim Walz for president and vice president. And it's risky to say somebody who at this point says they're still uncommitted would like to speak. Do you do that? Well, I don't know, especially not on the last night. Do you give ammunition to the Trump campaign to be able to say, look, even at their own convention, people don't like them? Probably unwise. So what's the story here? Uncommitted delegates get a no on their request for a Palestinian convention speaker. The pro-Palestinian delegates had signaled they would fully support Vice President Kamala Harris if given a few minutes on the convention stage. Okay, that's the claim. We will support you if you give us a few minutes on the stage. The worry, I think, is that you will use the few minutes on the stage to do something less than supportive. And if you wonder why, see if you can make it all the way through the story. Chicago, that's the dateline. The uncommitted delegates to the Democratic National Convention announced Wednesday night that their chief request was denied by Vice President Kamala Harris's campaign to have a Palestinian American speak to the convention here. The delegates, who were elected in Democratic primaries this year in protest of President Joe Biden's support for Israel's war in Gaza, have been signaling that they would commit to Harris if a Palestinian American was allowed to address the convention. So, that sounds reasonable enough, and we can take them, I suppose, for the sake of argument anyway, take them at their word initially. The overarching issue here, though, is what does it get anybody? You can, if it works, you can portray some unity, and you would be able, presumably, to pull some votes in from the Arab American community, Palestinian American community, sympathizers to either or both who say they're holding out. But it doesn't guarantee anything and doesn't deliver anything by itself, right? Okay, so they go on to say, I've been waiting for a call, said Abbas Alaway, a Michigan delegate and former congressional chief of staff who has acted as spokesperson for the delegates, holding up his cell phone as a prop. They weren't getting back to us. They weren't getting back to us. They weren't getting back to us. And then Allouez said a call came on Wednesday evening from an official he did not identify, and the call said, Abbas, the answer is no. The Harris campaign and convention organizers said they engaged with uncommitted delegates and other members of the Muslim and Arab community over the past several months, which led uncommitted delegates to say they were encouraged by the signals. Harris campaign manager Julie Chavez Rodriguez traveled to Michigan this week to meet local Arab leaders, and the campaign said she and Democratic National Committee senior staff have held meetings with uncommitted leaders in recent days. Okay, so it sounds like they might be getting somewhere. How many are we talking about? Well, we are talking about, in the end, we find out there are only 30 uncommitted delegates out of nearly 4,700 gathered at the United Center, though they said that an additional 250 Harris delegates signed a letter supporting their demand for a ceasefire and an arms embargo on Israel. But still, that number versus the 4,700, the nomination is done. They can't really leverage that. Still, their representation is a fraction of the total convention attendance and a far smaller group than the Bernie Sanders delegates at the 2016 convention, when nearly 40% of delegates were elected in support of the independent senator from Vermont. Okay, but let's get back to why are they finding themselves getting the answer of no? I think it might have something to do with this quote included at the end. Not from Allouez, but from Kaz Kader, K-A-D-E-R, a Washington state uncommitted delegate, and here's the comment. President Biden, I have a message to you. The next time I see you, give a salute. The next time you put your hand over your heart, I will see nothing but the blood of Palestinian children on your hand. Vice President Harris, you have watched his hand choke the Palestinian children, and you are a witness. Both of you are a disgrace. Are you going to get to yes with that statement? No. Are you going to rally your troops? Yes. You are playing to the constituency, but not to the party on the other side of the table. I can see why you got a no on that, even if you were just playing bad cop to Allouez's good cop.
You have been listening to Kagro in the Morning with David Waldman.
I mean, I just don't think it's going to happen. Not in this context. Maybe later. Maybe not at the big show, though. But that's how you get to know and how you remain at no. It's just, I think you knew that going in, but then you can't cry about not getting to yes. All right, we'll talk more about it, I'm sure, tomorrow and review what happens tonight. Maybe Greg will be around, too. Stay tuned for Justice next.